We continue now at the top of Daf Beis Amud Aleph in Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 2a. The Mishnah says, Arba Avos Nezikin. There are four main categories of Nezikin, of damages. Hashor, V'habor, V'hamave, V'hahever. The four main categories are Shor, Bor, Mave, and Hever. And Rashi explains, Arba Avos Nezikin, Avos Kari, Lahanoch Dechsivon Bekra Behedya. When we refer to something as Avos Nezikin, those are the kinds of damages that are discussed explicitly in the Pasuk. With the Gemara Mefarish Haini, who told us, the Gemara will explain if these are the Avos, what are the Toldos, what are the outgrowths from these kind of general categories of monetary damage. Hashor V'habor, again the Mishnah listed the four categories, Shor, Bor, Mav, and Hever. And Rashi says, Keseder Shen Ksuvin Beparsha, in the same order that we find it written in the Parsha, Sidron B'Mishnah, that's how it's ordered in the Mishnah, the Parsha Rishona, Nemra B'Shor. First the Pasuk speaks about Shor, Shniya B'Bor, then it talks about Bor. Shor refers to damages by a person's ox. Bor refers to damages by a pit that a person digs in the ground. Mave Mefarish B'Gemara, Mave is going to be explained in the Gemara. And finally, Hever is Kiseitze Eish, that refers to a damage that is caused when a person lights a fire. And the Mishnah continues, Lo Harei Hashor Kaharei Hamave, V'lo Harei Hamave Kaharei Hashor. Shor is not like Mave, and Mave is not like Shor. V'lo Zev Zesh Yesh Ben Ruach Hayim. And these two categories, Mave and Shor, that's talking about animals that have life. Kaharei Ha'esh, that's not similar to fire. She'ein bo Ruach Hayim. There is no life. Fire is not a living creature. And all three of these categories, they go out and they do damage. They're not similar, Kaharei Habor, they're not similar to the pit. She'ein darko leilech ulhazik, it doesn't go out and do damage, it sits in its place. So what is the common denominator between all four categories? Hatzad hashavah shebahen, the common denominator is shedarkon lahazik, that it is their way to do damage, ushmirason alecha, and it's an obligation upon you to guard, to protect against them doing damage, ucheshehizik, and when damage is done, chav hamazik l'shalem tashlumei nezek b'meitav haaretz, the person who caused the damage has to pay for the damage with the best of his land. And Rashi explains, Lo harei shor karei hamave, shor is not like mave. Kilomar, what the Mishnah is trying to say is, ikaz of rachmana shor, let's say the pasuk only wrote shor, lo nafik mave mineh, wouldn't necessarily know mave, they're not similar to one another. That's why everything needs to be written. Now the reason why it starts out that shor is not like mave, why don't we go in the order of the Mishnah? Shor is not like bor. Lo harei hashor karei habor, why don't we say that? Because then it's not going to work as it goes on in the Mishnah, saying that these two, they're creatures that have life. You're not going to be able to say that if you start with shor and bor. The habor ein bo ruach, because bor does not have life. There's another reason we go in this order. And we're trying to teach chidushim over here. Even though they're both alive, you can't learn out one from the other. The Gemara will explain what exactly the Mishnah means when it says this language of lo harei. They're not like fire, which has no life. I might have thought if the Torah didn't write it, that's pater, because it's not something that has life. And lo all three of these categories, they go out and they do damage, unlike bor. The Gemara will explain what is this common denominator coming to include. And finally, the Mishnah concluded you have to pay for the damages b'meitav haaretz, with the best of the land. That means me'idius nechasav, that's the best of his property. Yigmid mehezeko, the damage is, the value of the damage is collected from the best of his property. Imrotze lifroa lo karka, if he wants to pay him in karka, in land. And the Gemara says, Midakatani avos, from the fact that it says these are avos nezikin, these are the broad categories of monetary damage. Mechlal Deika told us that implies that there are some subcategories that are learned out from the broader general categories. Told us saying kayotze behen olav kayotze behen. The question is, are these toldos similar to the avos, or are they not similar to the avos? And the Gemara explains, Gabe Shabbos Tanan, by Hilchas Shabbos, we learned in the Mishnah also a concept of avos. Avos malachos are boim chasarachas. There are 39 avos malachos when it comes to the violations of Shabbos. Avos mechlal, the Ika told us, and the word avos implies there are toldos. So we can ask the question, toldos sehen kayotze behen, the toldos sehen, they are similar, loshna av chatos, veloshna tolda chatos. It doesn't matter if you violate an av, it doesn't matter if you violate a tolda, you're going to bring a carbon chatos. Loshna av skila, let's say you do it on purpose, there's no difference if it's an av, you get skila. Veloshna tolda skila, it's no different if it's a tolda, you're also going to get a punishment of skila. Umay iko bein av l'tolda. So what is the difference between an av and a tolda? If they're all treated the same, nafkamina, the difference is the ilu avit shtei avos bahadi hadadi. Let's say a person were to do two sins, two avos together. Inami shtei toldos bahadi hadadi. Let's say the two toldos together. Machayev akol chad v'chad. It'd actually be chayev two carbon chatases. He'd be chayev on each one. The ilu avit av tolda didei. But if a person violates by doing an av and its tolda, so that's all within one category, lo machayev elachada. So then he's only going to be chayev one. That's the only difference between av and tolda. And the Gemara continues with Rabbi Eliezer. Now, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the mechayev tolda b'makom av, he actually says you are chayev too. If you do, let's say, an av and it's tolda. So, amai kari la av, amai kari la tolda. Why is one called an av and one called a tolda? They seem to be exactly identical. And the Gemara says to that, hach dehava b'mishkan chashiva kari la av, that which is something, a kind of malacha that occurred in the building of the Mishkan. That's where we learn out the 39 avos malachas. So that's important. That's called an av. Hach de lo hava b'mishkan chashiva, but a tolda, something that wasn't directly done in the Mishkan, it's not considered important. Kari la tolda, that's referred to as a tolda. And the Gemara continues, that's true when it comes to Hilchas Shabbos. The avos and the toldos are similar. Gabe tumos tanan. Now by tumah also, we have this concept of avos, hatumos, hasheretz, vashich vazera. It says the major categories of tumah are sheretz, the creepy, crawly creatures, and shich vazera, the semen. And Rashi explains, chatos, you bring a carbon chatos if you do a malacha on Shabbos b'shogeg by mistake. Skila, you get a punishment of skila, stoning. If you do it b'mezid, if you do it on purpose. Iavit shtei avos b'shogeg. And let's say a person would do two avos by mistake, so mechayev tarti chatos, you would actually mechayev two carbon chatoses. But if you do an av and it's tolda, lo mechayev elachad, you only chayev one, not av malach, you only chayev on the av. Aval tolda didei lo mechayev, you're not chayev on the tolda. But what about according to Rabbi Eliezer? The Gemara said, Rabbi Eliezer the mechayev tarti, the av tolda didei. Rabbi Eliezer holds if you did an av and it's tolda mechayev tarti chatos, you're actually chayev two chatos. That's been Meseches Krisos b'perak Amrlo. That's learned out in Meseches Krisos. Kulu avos malachos mi mishkan gamrinanlu. In general, all the avos malachos are learned out from the work that it took to build the Mishkan b'Meseches Shabbos. That's all learned out in Meseches Shabbos, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Beis Amud Beis.